All right, so first off, what is a y-intercept? What is a y-intercept? Yeah. Where it crosses the y-axis. That's exactly right. So what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to do this calculator-wise, and then we'll talk about just the basics of this. What I'm typing into my calculator is our equation, negative parentheses 3x minus 3 times x squared plus 5. So I type all that in my calculator. My y equals. And then from my y equals, what I'm going to do is graph. And I can get a visual look at seeing where my y-intercept is. I might be in a real weird window here, but really the smart way to find your y-intercept is just to look at the table. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my table, second table, and then just go to x equal to 0. You will always have this, and here's what I'm talking about. I'm in a really weird window because the last question I did, we stuck it in the window for the last question. So I'm actually going to delete this one and then move myself to a standard window where we can actually see what's going on there. Trash this one. What I'm hitting is Zoom 6, by the way. Zoom 6 will put you in a standard window. As you can see, you cannot see the y-intercept there. So I'm going to make the y's go up to, let's say, 50. So at least now when I graph, I have an idea of where it's crossing. But again, you can see that this is not very telling because I can't tell where that is exactly. So the table is always a good place to be because it will always be on the table 0, 15. But what I want to also talk about is this. Anytime you're looking for a y-intercept, replace the x's with 0. We can do this math in our head. So negative sign, of course, when I plug in 0, it would be 3 times 0, which of course is 0. Minus 3. And then the second set of parentheses is going to be 0 squared plus 5. Right? And when we have this, what we essentially have is negative 3 times 5. So when push comes to shove, if somebody takes your calculator away from you, the y-intercept is simply the x's substituted in with a 0. So it's 15. Graphing's a little bit faster there. See what I mean? But that's one thing we can do. All right, so let's take a look at this one. First thing I'm going to do, of course, is type it into my y equals. You guys do the same thing. Try to follow along. Let's get a little fluent at this thing. So y equals 2x squared plus 6x plus 2. So we type it in our calculator first, obviously. Next thing we do, I'm going to graph this thing so we can take a look at that graph. Actually, I'm going to hit Zoom 6 because I'm in a weird window again. So this is what the graph looks like. Make sure you're paying attention to what the question is asking. Doesn't matter yet because I just started this thing. So the question we're being asked in this one, though, is find the 0 values. So remember, where are 0 values? Where's the important line? The x-axis, right? Those are our 0 values, ZARs, zeros, answers, roots, solutions. That is our important line, is the x-intercept. So listen and follow with these steps that I'm going to do. All right? So I go to my calculator. Write these down if you need to. We're going to hit the button in there right at the front there. Y'all see that? Directly below the TV, those of you in the front there. It's second. And then the calculate which is the trace button, which will take us to this screen. We want to go to option 2, so I'm going to scroll down actually. So we're going to go to the zeros because this one we're looking for zeros. And our calculator is going to start asking us questions after we hit 0. The first question it's going to say is left bound. So I'm going to move my spider left of the, there are 2 solutions. So I'm going to move my spider left of the left solution. There's my left bound. And I'm going to hit enter. The next question it's going to ask me is right bound. And I'm going to move my spider to the right of the solution. And then the last question it's going to ask me is to guess. And on the guess, you can actually just hit enter a second time. You don't really have to do the guess. That's usually for higher degree polynomials where it's a little harder to tell. So we would hit the guess. And then we hit enter a final time. And then it's going to produce us a solution. There's our solution. Minimize a few of these things we don't need to see as much so we can see the good stuff. So that would be our process for finding 0 values. Now pay attention to the question. It does ask us to round to the nearest hundredths place. So to the nearest hundredths place, remember tens, hundredths, that's 2 decimal places. So our first answer is going to be negative 2.62. Now for delta math purposes, remember if you hit the comma, it will produce a second solution for you to put in, or if you go over to the right where the keyboard is and hit the plus sign, that will also get you to the spot. So there's our first solution. We'll write it in this form. And what we do to find our second solution is the exact same process, but on that other leg. So we'll do the exact same process on the other leg. I'm not going to pull these over. I'm just going to do these. I'm going to verbally say what's going on. But let's take a look. I don't think this is going to show up on a video, guys. I apologize. Maybe I can throw them up there real small and fix it later. So here we go. We go second, calculate, which is the trace button. We are still looking for a 0. We are just now looking for the second leg 0. So we go left bound. Hit enter. We go right bound. Hit enter. And then we guess. And again, on the guess, you really could just hit enter a third time, and it would your calculator would understand because it's just a quadratic. And then it's going to give us the second solution. We'll make this one a little bigger here. So our second solution, back to this, negative 0.38. So there's our 2 solutions. And remember, that's not an ordered pair. That is not an ordered pair. That is the 2 solutions. the zeros, that's nice and good. So the good news is we'll do the same process when we're trying to find maximum or a minimum. This one just happens to be a minimum because the shape of the graph. The graph is obviously opening upward because we have a positive number here. So let's take a look and see. Again, we'll start by going to our calculator. Try to follow along. This is your second example. This is one of those deals, guys, where it's just repetition will help you remember this. Watching me do it over and over doesn't make you any better. Make sure you're practicing. Plus 15.7. And again, we're not factoring this thing. It's a little tougher one to do with the even the axis of symmetry formula. It's not impossible. Pretty difficult. Pretty difficult. All right. So we have our equation first off. I'm going to graph the thing just to see what it looks like. Make sure it's actually in my screen. There it is. And we are looking for a minimum value. This one doesn't have a maximum. It may have a local, but it does not have a universal max because it's going up forever. So it's really the same process, guys. We're going to hit one different button. It's second. It's calculate, which is the trace button. But instead of hitting option 2 for 0 values, we're hitting option 3, which is minimum. So what do you think we're going to do differently if we're looking for a maximum? What do you think we'll do differently if we're looking for a max? Hit the number 4, right? It's not a real tricky type situation. Now your calculator loves to ask you questions. First question, left bound. There it is. Next question it's going to ask me after I hit enter on that is right bound. Anywhere right of the vertex. Make sure you keep your spider on the screen. I call that thing a spider. Make sure you keep that on the screen. If you take it off the screen, your calculator will be confused. So we go right bound. And you actually could just hit enter again if you wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and put my spider at about where it's supposed to be, which is about the vertex. By the way, that is not the solution until you hit enter. Whoops, I forgot to hit enter. Thought I did hit enter. I never hit enter on the right bound. That's my problem. It's a big problem.
It's not showing the spider even if it's on the screen before.
Well, you have to look on your X and see where it is. Like you might have to hit right or left until the spider shows up. It's there. You just have to look and see where it is. I'll show you what I mean in just a second here. What she asked was her, huh? Yeah. What happens sometimes is your spider is off the screen. So what you have to do is look down here at the bottom left and see where it is. A lot of times they put it at the origin. Most of the time your calculator is smart enough to know where you want it to be. But sometimes it's not. Now, something else happens on this that I want to point out. It did not ask me for the vertex, did it? The vertex is not 2.999999995. Your calculator does a little bit of not rounding, but it's doing a little bit of estimating on these things. When you get a number like that, that number is 3. All right? 2.999999989 or 3.0000001.00002. That is the number. All right? Don't be too technical with this thing. So the vertex of this thing would be 3, 2.2, but it did not ask me for the vertex. What did it ask me for? What did it ask me for? Just the minimum value, right? So the minimum value here would be 2.2. 2.2. Make sure you read and see what it's actually asking you for. So our next little, excuse me, example here. Obviously, we can't use the calculator until we give it our information. So let's take it to our y equals negative 3x squared. By the way, if you ever need to use a power higher than 2, hit the little button below clear. That's how you create a power. So if you need to go power higher than 2, you could do it that way. Under math, you can find cubic, but it's actually easier, or just as easy, excuse me, to hit that button below clear. Instead of, and that's a good point, if you use the subtraction sign, it's going to count it wrong. Next to the decimal point is your negative button. Sorry. So obviously we graph this thing. We got 2 things we're asking for on this. I'm actually going to take a peek and see on the table if I'm lucky and I can see any 0 values. And I'm going to point out a couple of things to you here. I'll probably delete this right after. But you see how between -7 and -6, we jump from negative to positive, right? That means there's a 0 in between there, because you can't go to from negative to positive without crossing 0. And I'm going to scroll down and see if there's another one somewhere. I know there is because I saw the graph. There it is, round about between 13 and 14, right? So we'll keep that in mind, put those to the side there and look at it. Excuse me. So let's look for those roots. Go to our calculator. We're going to look for roots, which are 0 values. So we go second, calculate. 0 values. Actually, here's the window it sends me to in a graph. This is not that useful for the second solution. So what I'm going to do is adjust my windows. Try this out for size. What we're going to do is hit zoom 0 on our calculator. Zoom 0 is basically asking your calculator, hey, what do you think I should be looking at? My calculator thinks I should be looking at this. I disagree a little bit because I don't see my second 0 value. That's okay. I'm not mad at my calculator. It does a lot for me. So we'll put that out of the way for a moment. I need to look further to the right. So I'm going to change my window to, instead of going to X minimum of 10, I'm going to set it to like 25. You at home can see what I did there. I set my X maximum to 25. Whoa. Set it to 25, and we'll see where this looks. So now you can see, I see all of my left to right action that I'm supposed to see. But I really would like to see more, more vertical stuff. This is not being agreeable. I'd like to see that vertex more. So I'm going to make my Y max be a little bit taller too. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to make my Y max. Let's see what it is, and then we'll adjust accordingly. Hit Windows. My Y max is currently at 300. So let's just set it to 350. Now when I graph it, now I see all the action. I see my vertex very clearly. I see my zeros very clearly. So now we'll use this window and do all the stuff we worked on. Remember our steps. Same step, isn't it? All day long. Second, trace button, which is calc. Let's do the zeros first. 0, there are 2 of them, so we'll have to do this twice. We will go left bound. Hit enter. We will go right bound. Make sure you keep your spider on the screen. We will hit enter. And then guess, really, you just have to hit enter a 3rd time. But if you really want to, move it to where you think the solution is. And then hit enter 3rd time. And then we get our 0 value of negative. And this one said round to the, if I remember right, 3rd decimal place. Is that what it says? 3. So negative 6.496 because the 5 dots round up to a 6. All right. And we will do the same thing. We will do the same thing with all of the others. Get these out of the way a little bit here. We'll go a little quicker on this one. We'll go again, second, calculate, 0 value, because we're looking for our other one. Scroll over to the left bound. And make sure on this, you always stay on the correct side of the vertex of these. If you go to the wrong side of the vertex, your calculator is going to give you an error. Remember, the vertex is that highest or lowest point. Right bound, guess, enter, enter. I'm going to just go straight to the solution on this one. We've had several of those, so our next solution is positive 13.4958. So this would roll up to 6. So those are our 2 roots. I don't know why I put it by vertex. Those are our 2 roots. So somebody tell me, what am I going to do different for the vertex? What am I going to do different for the vertex? I'm going to push one button different, aren't I? That's all I'm going to do is I'm going to push one button different. Instead of hitting the zeros like I did, I'm going to hit, in this case, are we looking at a max or a minimum? Does this shape have a max or does it have a minimum? As a maximum. And the A value is negative, so we know that this is going to be that anyway. All right, let's go for it. Second, calculate. Y'all gonna be sick of hearing that by the end of the day, by the way. Number 4 is maximum because we are dealing with a max here. I hit enter. It's going to ask me 3 questions. Left bound. By the way, if your vertex is not in the picture, it's going to give you an error as well. So make sure you get your vertex in the picture. That's why I rose my Y max up a little bit that one time. Even though I think it was in there, but if it wasn't in there, I was going to have to change the window, so you might as well take care of it now. So left bound, enter. Right bound. Enter. And then it's going to ask me to guess. Just hit enter at that highest point. Whoa. Let me ask you this. What is my calculator telling me the X value is? When it says 3.4999989, what is that number? Do you think that number is 3.499999989? What is it? 3.5. Yeah, that is so close to that. And what it is just, it's not, I won't even say it's a glitch in the app. It's just, it's numbers, whatever the formatting is for this thing, it just off a little bit. Now, on the other hand, 2.299, excuse me, is 299.75. That is not my calculator having issues, so to speak. That's a pretty substantial number. That's 3/4. 299 and 3/4. All right. Pretty useful stuff, right? Max, minimum, vertex, X solutions. It's really the same sequence of buttons, isn't it? Second, calc. Pick a one. It's either 2 zeros, 3 minimum. Let me double check that. I think minimum's first. Yeah. 2 0, 3 minimum, 4 maximum. On the same regard, number one is value, by the way. If you're ever just looking up a value, it's there for you. All right, this one, I only gave you this one we're going to do. So I only gave you this one we're going to do together. And then I also gave you one to do on your own. They're a little time consuming. I understand that. So just bear with me on this. Also, Delta Math is very fickle about this thing. So make sure you put the points in the right spot. Otherwise, it will count them wrong. Obviously, we're going to start by putting our equation in the calculator. Follow along with me on this. Do this on your own. Because this is one of those where you're going to need your calculator. You're not going to be able to just copy my answers off the board. You're going to want to see that calculator as you do these. By the way, let's talk about this. Let's see what we learned yesterday. How is this graph going to look? It's cubic. Odd functions, what do? This or this? They do that. All right, they've got that motion where they leave and enter in different directions. Is it going to leave to the positive or is it going to leave to the negative? What is your A value? What's your A value? Positive, right? So this is going to leave through the positive, which means it's going to exit through the negative, left negative. All right, let's do this as well. Follow along with me. Change your windows. Let's change our windows to what they have. Notice the lowest X they have is -10. The highest X they have is +10. The XSSCL is the X scale. Basically, it's your calculator saying, what do you want to count by? The lowest Y we have is -500. The highest Y we have is +500. So I'm going to set my window to match the graph. The only thing that doesn't match is my Y scale is 1. I guess you could technically change that to 50. I rarely ever change a scale. And the reason why I do that is because it just changes the number of tick marks. But the calculator usually does whatever anyway. All right, so when we graph this thing, we're going to get a good idea of what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at. But to be honest with you, the graph on these particular questions is not really as helpful as the table is. We can get a general idea and recognize when our graph is going wrong, but the best thing to do is to look at the table. So I'm going to pull up the tables from -10. We won't go all the way to -10. Let's just go to -8 to -2. We'll pull up some tables here so we can look at. If you get ahead of me, just start plotting points. Go -1 to 5. And then 5 to +10. I really probably should have kept the -9 in the picture there. But there's our table graphs we're going to point. Now, guys, when you click something on the Delta Math, read the prompt that they're going to give you. Y'all sometimes get accustomed to when you see a prompt in Delta Math that you made a mistake. Those prompts don't always say you made a mistake. Sometimes those prompts say, hey, add a point for 8, x equal to 8. Or it will say your number 4 is wrong. Don't just think, oh, everything's wrong. Read that prompt. Read that prompt, because if you miss it too many times, it'll eventually count it wrong. So here we go. Follow along with me. -8 is -280. You don't have to be getting a ruler out or anything like that, but you have to have it in a reasonable spot. For instance, if you put this above 250, you've got a problem. Or if you put it right on 300, you have a problem. So it doesn't have to be like incredibly precise, but it needs to be in the ballpark. Like this is -117. If I have it below 150, then it's wrong. So -60, that's right on the x-axis. I hope everybody's following this particular part because this is a two-part question. They're a little bit time-consuming. You have the one you're doing with me, and you have another one you'll do on your own. So like this one, -577. Well, make sure it's higher than 50. Make sure it's higher than 50. And by the way, you should usually tell whenever you're kind of done something wrong because there's not going to be a smoothness to the curve. -4, 120, -3, 135. Feels like it's about to start bending back because it's a little less severe. And there you go. It's bending back, isn't it? -2 is 128. See, I probably should have that a little lower. I think I would get away with that. I think I would, but I probably should have it lower. Let me see if I can just, yeah, we'll do that. 128 is closer to almost as close to 100 as 150. So there we go. -1 is 105. That's basically on the 100 mark. But here's the part where you're going to mess it up. If you put it below the 100 mark, you've missed it. 0.72, that's our y-intercept, right? 135, that is below the 50 mark, so make sure you have that right. 20, 133, 3, -27, almost halfway. 4, -40. It's almost on the 50 mark, but not quite. 5 is -33, coming back up. 6 is 0. 765, slightly above 50. 8, 168. It's above 150, but below 200. And 9, 315. I think I probably have enough points at this, but 5, well, that's all. I'm out because 10 is 512, which is off the graph. All right, get yourself to this point, and then above your graph, what you'll see is, what does it say above the graph? Come on, if I take a peek. Plot function. Once you got enough points, hit plot function. When you hit plot function, it will give you some prompts. It'll either show the graph and because you're right, or it will say, hey, fix number 8 or fix 4 or add a point. It actually told me one time I had too many points. I don't know why it said that, but it did. Let me know when you get to there. I'm going to walk around and we'll talk about the factored version. Once you hit that, just hold off for a minute. If you want to work ahead, I'll gladly teach it quickly.